Those exact words, like a whisper wrapped in barbed wire, echoed through every milestone of my childhood. The first time I heard them, I was 6. I had just won my first spelling bee, standing small and proud with a cheap plastic medal that felt like gold around my neck. I remember running home barefoot because I was too excited to wait for the bus. I burst through the doors, medal in hand, hoping, no, believing, that my parents would smile, clap, maybe even take me out for ice cream. Instead, I found them dressed in formal wear, preparing the dining hall for one of their extravagant charity galas. My mother glanced at me briefly, her hair pinned perfectly in place, her pearls catching the light. My father didn't look at me at all. "Sweetheart," she said, adjusting a flower arrangement. "That's lovely, but we don't have the budget to do something for that right now, okay? We have guests coming. Maybe next time." I nodded. I was a quiet kid, trained to be grateful for scraps of attention. I tucked the medal into my pocket and sat on the staircase, watching as they laughed with strangers and toasted champagne under chandeliers that probably cost more than our car. That was the first of many next times that never came. Our house was beautiful, white brick, long driveway, a fountain out front. From the outside, we looked like the kind of family that hosted Christmas card photo shoots on the front lawn. Inside, it was different. My room was the only place untouched by celebration. No birthday balloons. No glittering congratulations banners, no photos on the walls. My mother said clutter made her anxious. My father said birthdays were a distraction from real priorities. But strangely, the house was always full of parties, just never for me. They celebrated everyone else. Lavish engagement parties for their friends' children, fundraisers for distant relatives, retirement dinners for colleagues. I remember once at 12, watching them spend $8,000 on a rooftop garden soiree for a client's dog's birthday. They hired a violinist. The dog had a 3-tiered cake. The next week was my own birthday. My parents were out of town. They left a $10 bill on the kitchen counter with a note, "Get yourself something sweet, kiddo." I stopped asking after a while. I learned that hoping hurt more than being ignored. School became my escape. I threw myself into books, joined clubs, volunteered, and won every award I could get my hands on. I thought if I just became undeniably impressive, they'd finally see me. At 17, I won a National Academic Award. I was one of 5 students in the country to receive it. My guidance counselor cried, my classmates clapped. I stood on stage, shaking hands with officials, dreaming that maybe this would be it. That night, I came home early, still in my school uniform holding the certificate. I should have known. The house was lit up with golden lights. Cars lined the street. Laughter spilled from the open windows. My parents were throwing an engagement party for the daughter of one of their investors. Champagne, caviar, live jazz band, strangers in silk dresses floating through the halls of my childhood. I stood at the door with my award in hand, watching people toast to someone else's happiness in my house. My father saw me. "Don't stand in the doorway, Isla," he said, brushing past me with 2 flutes of champagne. "And put that away. It's not the time. Not the time." That night, I packed the award into a shoebox and hid it under my bed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just knew something inside me had cracked, and that the fracture would grow. A week later, I overheard them talking. "She's too emotional." My mother said over coffee, "It's not like we're bad parents. She just expects things we can't afford to give." Kids these days are entitled. My father muttered, always needing applause. She should be grateful we gave her a good life. A good life. Luxury without love. A mansion without memories. At 18, I left for college 2 states away. I didn't tell them the exact address. They didn't ask. I got in on scholarship. I worked 2 jobs. I lived in a shoebox apartment and ate ramen 4 times a week. And for the first time in my life, I was happy. Not because I had everything, but because for once, I wasn't invisible. I remember sitting in my dorm on my 19th birthday, eating a cupcake I bought with tip money. It had 1 candle. I lit it, whispered "Happy Birthday" to myself, and laughed. It was more than they ever gave me, but the pain stayed. It carved a hollow space inside me, one I didn't know how to fill. Even now, years later, people ask why I don't talk about my childhood, why I changed my last name, why I never go home, and I tell them the truth, because my parents could always afford the party. They just couldn't afford me. The scholarships barely covered tuition. I worked the front desk at the campus library in the mornings and served coffee at a cramped cafe until midnight. Some nights I slept in the break room between shifts. Other nights I studied under flickering lights with the kind of hunger that wasn't just for food, but for something more. Recognition, peace, a life that was mine. There were no care packages, no weekend phone calls, no surprise visits. My parents never saw my dorm, never asked how I was doing. In their world I had vanished, and in mine I was trying to exist. What they didn't know was that I was quietly winning. I got published in a national journal during my sophomore year. I led a research project that went viral on academic Twitter. I became a student advisor, and my professors started calling me the girl who never stops. I wasn't chasing approval anymore. I was chasing a future where I no longer needed it, but some wounds don't close just because you cover them with success. One rainy afternoon, I was curled up on a bench in the quad, too tired to walk home. I opened my journal, a place I hadn't touched in weeks. Pages of bitterness poured out like old blood. They celebrated dogs and investors' kids, but never me. They always said they couldn't afford to love me out loud. And now, I'm learning how to love myself in silence. I didn't know it then, but that journal entry would change my life. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. An email from my mother. Subject, family gathering, please come home message. Isla, your father and I are hosting a networking dinner at the house for some close family and friends. It would mean a lot to us if you came. We'd love to see you. I stared at the screen for a long time. No mention of how I was. No, we miss you. Just another event. Another evening where I'd be expected to dress up and smile at strangers while pretending I hadn't been forgotten for years. But a part of me, the wounded part, still wanted to believe they meant it this time, so I went. The house was the same. Pristine, empty in all the wrong ways. My childhood room had been turned into a guest suite, my books gone. My old drawings thrown out on the nightstand, and sat a brochure for a luxury spa resort. Downstairs, the party was in full swing. Catered appetizers, jazz trio, waiters in tuxedos, laughter echoing under the same chandeliers I had once stared at in silence. I stood in the foyer, gripping the strap of my not bag, watching the glittering people who didn't know me and never would. My mother spotted me. Isla, there you are. She kissed the air beside my cheek. Oh, good. You wore something simple. You won't distract from the guests. Distract. Not shine, not stand out. Just stay quiet. I nodded numb, an hour in. I tried to make small talk with a woman my mother introduced as a future investor. She asked if I worked for my dad. I said no. I'm in my 3rd year of neuroscience with a published paper in cognitive pattern research. She blinked. Oh, so nothing useful. I left. I walked 2 miles in heels through light rain to the nearest train station. I didn't cry. I didn't scream, but something clicked. I'm done. I was done pretending they'd change. Done letting them rent space in my head, like I was still 6 years old, with a spelling bee medal. That night, in my tiny apartment, I reopened my journal. That bitter entry, I posted it anonymously on a mental health forum with the caption, "When you're the child they couldn't afford to celebrate." By morning, it had over 12,000 shares. By evening, it was reposted on blogs, parenting forums, and even quoted in an online article titled "The Invisible Child Syndrome." Something had struck a nerve. I created a pen name, opened a blog, wrote more. Stories about forgotten kids, about children raised in golden cages, about birthdays missed and milestones ignored. The blog grew. I started getting messages from people across the world. "You're writing my childhood. I thought I was the only one. You put words to something I never could." The invisible girl had found her voice. And the world had started to listen. One day, a message came in from a woman named Dr. Lena Cho, a child psychologist and professor at a nearby university. She had been following the blog for months. "Isla, I hope that's your real name. Your writing isn't just personal, it's powerful. Have you ever considered turning this into something more?" She invited me to coffee. That coffee turned into a mentorship. That mentorship turned into a partnership. Dr. Cho helped me build a platform, unseen and unheard, a digital space for youth who had grown up feeling invisible in wealthy, emotionally detached households. We offered stories, resources, even anonymous therapy connections. By the time I graduated, we had 200,000 followers and were featured in an online documentary. My parents didn't know. They didn't ask. They assumed I was still trying to find myself. They didn't know I was being found by thousands. Did it hurt? Of course, but the turning point wasn't becoming successful. It was realizing that I didn't need them to see me to exist. I could exist, grow, and shine without their applause. And maybe, just maybe, the sweetest kind of revenge was becoming someone the world celebrated without ever needing their permission. Isla Marin, keynote speaker, Global Youth Resilience Conference, that's what the polished white letters said on the stage screen behind me, glowing like quiet triumph. The ballroom in New York City was full over 2,000 attendees, live streamed globally. The theme was From Shadows to Light. And somehow, I had become the face of it. I stood backstage, adjusting the pin on my blazer, steadying my breath, not from nerves, but from the surreal weight of it all. From the knowledge that this was the moment I used to dream about in the darkness of my childhood bedroom. Not out of spite, but out of hope. Hope that someday someone would see me, and know I was worth the celebration my parents never gave. The journey here hadn't been a straight line. After college, unseen and unheard, became more than a platform. It became a movement. We partnered with schools, mental health orgs, and foster care advocates. We developed a mentorship app. I published a book of essays called Daughters of Silence. It hit the NYT bestseller list in 3 weeks. There were offers, interviews, awards, book tours. But the thing I held dearest was the inbox full of letters from people like me. Boys, girls, adults now, who'd lived their entire lives in the shadows of uncelebrated worth. "You gave me language for my grief. Your words saved me. I didn't think anyone saw me until I read your story." The girl they couldn't afford to celebrate had become someone the world couldn't stop celebrating. And that was the sweetest revenge, not hurting them. Just becoming whole without them. Backstage, I got a text from my assistant. "Your parents are in the back row. Registered late. Different surname." I stared at the message. My chest didn't tighten. My hands didn't shake. I felt nothing. And maybe nothing was what freedom felt like. They were here not for me, but because for the first time, they had something to gain from my name. I stepped out into the light. The crowd stood applauding. Cameras flashed. Microphones blinked red. I stood at the podium, took a breath, and began. When I was young, my parents told me they couldn't afford to celebrate me. They threw parties for dogs, for clients, for strangers, but never for me. Not a single birthday, not a single trophy, not even the day I won a national award. For a long time, I believed I was the problem, that I wasn't lovable, that maybe I had to earn my worth, and I tried so hard. But the truth is, children don't need to earn celebration. Children don't need to prove they're worthy of love. If you are raising a child, mentoring one, teaching one, you hold power, and if you withhold love, that child might spend decades wondering what was wrong with them. Today, I speak not for the child I was, but for the millions of children still waiting to be seen. This stage is not my revenge. It's my resurrection. The room was still. A single person started clapping. Then another, and another. The applause grew thunderous, but I didn't look for them. My parents, I didn't need to. Because this wasn't for them. It never was. After the talk, I was whisked backstage for press photos. Someone handed me flowers. A reporter asked for a quote. And then, in the corner of my eye, I saw them. My mother, older now, still elegant. My father, slower on his feet, wearing a suit he probably hadn't been able to afford without help. They approached cautiously. "Isla," my mother said, voice tight with rehearsed softness. "That was beautiful." I nodded. "Thank you," I said, My father stepped forward. We've been following your work. We're proud of you. Pride. What a strange thing to offer now, like handing someone an umbrella after the storm has passed. I looked them in the eyes, not cruelly. Just honestly, do you know how many birthdays you missed? I asked gently. My mother blinked. We were busy. We didn't realize how much it hurt you. You didn't want to realize. Silence. I don't hate you, I said. I just no longer need your approval to exist. Then I handed them an envelope. Inside was an invitation, not to a family dinner, not to a private reunion, to my gala, a fundraiser celebrating the 10-year anniversary of Unseen and Unheard. They were invited, but not as guests of honor, not at the head table, in the back, where the forgotten ones always sat. I'll have someone show you your seats, I said softly. It's going to be a beautiful night, and I walked away. That night, I stood under lights brighter than any chandelier in our old house. I wore a gown stitched with constellations, my hair pinned high, my voice steady as I addressed the hundreds gathered. I dedicated the night to children with stories like mine. I read letters from teens across the world. I raised over $1, 5 million in 2 hours. I glanced once, only once, at the back of the room. They were sitting side by side, clapping with the rest, my father wiping something from his eye, my mother unmoving. They saw me now, but it no longer mattered. That's the thing about sweet revenge. It isn't served cold. It's served warm with light, with grace. It's looking your past in the face and saying, you didn't break me. You just built the road I walked away on, and then walking it,